This week's episode of Bioactive is all about cannabis suppositories, which are a niche yet increasingly popular form of administration. Suppositories are often used by people who can't use edible products or don't want to inhale, and this is often people with GI issues, chronic pain, or chronic nausea. And suppositories are much appreciated for their fast-acting abilities as well as their long duration of effects. If you're looking for cannabis suppositories, there's some different options. You can purchase them at a dispensary, especially if that dispensary specializes in medical products. You can find them on the hemp market if you're looking for more of a CBD-based product, or you can make them at home. There's really simple recipes that essentially just take cannabis oil and some sort of more firm solid, such as cocoa butter or coconut oil. Find the right ratio, pour it into a mold, and you can make them at home. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now. A lot of people are extremely stressed out, and 2025 just started. So while you're listening, take a few deep breaths, make sure to drink some water, take a rip of the bong, and just chill with Megan and I for the next hour or so. Well, welcome back to the Bioactive podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Riley Kirk, and I am here with Megan Mbengue, aka Trusted Cannabis Nurse, on all platforms that you may consume media. Today we're going to talk about some really interesting data that Megan got back from a study on one of the products that she has. But before we get to that, for anyone who hasn't heard our previous episodes, Megan, can you give a little background on what you do as a cannabis nurse? And then we'll kind of get into your study and learn more about suppositories and this really interesting way to use cannabis.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to be here again. My name is Megan Mbengue. I'm a registered nurse with a master's degree in medical cannabis therapeutics. And my company, Trusted Cannabis Nurse, empowers people to heal themselves with both cannabis and psychedelics. We have a line of really therapeutic, high-quality, whole plant hemp products that we offer to people nationwide. And we recently completed a market study on these suppositories for period pain. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. And we'll talk about your products throughout this episode, but I want to give a shout out to your CBG and CBGA tincture because I took that today. Actually, I haven't consumed any THC today and I am feeling great. I used just a dropper full of your tincture and I don't like, my eyes are so open. I find CBG so stimulating for my brain, but my brain also like doesn't crave other forms of cannabis when I use CBG. It's a little more powerful for me than consuming CBD. And I find it really useful for my brain. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't like smoking CBG flower. I find it really harsh a lot. I've said this many, many times. There are some CBG products that I've enjoyed smoking, but a lot of the time I just don't enjoy the experience. And it's really low on terps a lot of the time. But your tincture is awesome. And my first positive experience I ever had with CBG was from a tincture as well. So thank you for sharing that. It's really amazing. And I'm really enjoying the effects.
Yay. I'm so glad you like it. CBG is my favorite. It can help with so many things, pain, focus, just those physical symptoms of anxiety we feel because unlike, I don't know if any of the other cannabinoids do this. I don't think they do. That action on our alpha-2 adrenergic receptors, those receptors involved in our fight or flight response. And CBG is the only cannabinoid that actually acts on those and kind of turns the volume down on that signaling. So when I'm feeling like the anxiety in my chest or my stomach, the CBG definitely helps to like calm that down without being impairing like THC is.
I do believe it's the only cannabinoid with that effect in the body, which is really great. And also part of the reason why it's great for a lot of people who have ADHD or just a hyperactive brain in general. I definitely have a hyperactive brain, and I think that's why I respond so well to CBG, and it makes me feel, so laser focused during the day, especially if, there's some days that we just don't want to have THC kind of inhibiting or changing the way that we're doing things. So I think CBG is a great daytime cannabinoid product.
Agreed. 100%.
Cool. All right. Can we start talking about suppositories? Because I've never talked about suppositories like on this podcast before, and to be honest, I'm quite naive to suppositories in general. So my first question is, could you just describe what a suppository is, and then we'll get into who may benefit from them and go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So our suppositories are kind of dubbed the clam calming kudu shooter. And I got this name from it was actually like a kind of a cool story. Last year on Facebook, I have a large Facebook following, and I was going through we're trying to think of a name for what do we name these suppositories. And then I think it was a guy who said clam calming kudu shooter, and that just we almost went with that for the product.
You're like, say less. That is the name of our product now.
Right. But then we're like, okay, people might not take us that seriously if the actual product is named that. So that's the nickname. And then we landed on Yoni's for the suppository. And what suppositories do is they deliver medicine directly to the site, almost like a topical, but for your hoo-ha, or they can be used rectally for they're great for low back pain, period cramps, any sort of pelvic issues that people have.
Yeah, I've heard it a lot described as like any pain below the waist. So yeah, as you're saying, like a series of different things. But I guess a question would be: is the same formulation of suppository used vaginally and rectally, or do you need a specific suppository to use for one versus the other?
They can be used. I mean, in our study, we had 14% of people said that they used them rectally. We do have a number of men who use our suppositories. Of course, they're using them rectally. So it doesn't have to be a different formulation used. It can be the same one used both routes.
Okay, cool. And so these next few questions are for my husband, Jake, because we were talking about this podcast last night, and I was like, I'm so excited to talk to Megan. And I was showing him these suppositories. So if you're watching on YouTube, I am literally holding up Megan's suppositories that she's made. And Jake immediately said, "What? How do I do it? Like, how do I administer it?" So would you mind, because I'm comparing this to like maybe something like a tampon, right? Where you have an applicator and that's assisting and getting it to where it needs to go. Could you walk us through how to put this into our body?
Sure. I've never been asked this before. Okay, so the suppositories are shaped kind of like a little bullet almost. Like a little shooter. Yeah. Yeah, so they have a pointy end and a flat end. And of course, the pointy end is going to go in first. For women using it for pelvic pain, what we have found, I mean, they make suppository applicators. Sometimes those are easy to use. Sometimes those are just a pain in the butt to use. But what we have found works is getting, inserting the suppository up behind the cervix as far as possible.
So like putting it between your fingers like this, and then
that, or I will just use my thumb to get it, because positioning can be weird. Because this is a weird conversation, but
well, honestly, I was like hesitant between even asking this, but
it's so great though. It's really needed.
Well, and it's like, it's kind of the information a lot of people. Jake was not the only person who did ask these types of questions. And I was like, a huge goal of this podcast is to reduce the barrier to using this medicine. And that leads to questions like putting your finger up your butt, which I think we need to talk about. Like, we need to know how to use these products.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So for women using vaginally, just going up as far as possible, and then, maybe putting it in front of your cervix if you're targeting bladder issues. People have used it for bladder spasms. Maybe behind the cervix for any sort of like low back pain, and just kind of positioning it that way. For people using rectally, you definitely want to make sure it's solid. In the summer heat, keep it in the fridge before use. Otherwise, it's going to be a mess. And then on insertion, it's made with cocoa butter, so you shouldn't need an extra lubricant, but you can use one if you need one. And then, just using it to put in your bottom, and you want to make sure you're going past the entire sphincter muscle. Some people, if men are taking it for prostate issues, they want to make sure that it's as close to the prostate as possible. If you go too far, you can hit the hepatic vein. And that's where you get increased like systemic absorption,
Okay.
which can be a good thing if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for local issues, then maybe don't push it up so far.
Yeah, no, that's great information. And a question that I got on Patreon from somebody who doesn't want their name out there, which is totally cool. Do you get high from using suppositories? Like, do you feel the mental high, or is it really just like the pain relief that you're kind of feeling?
Yeah, great question. So we don't have research on systemic absorption. This is research that I would love to actually conduct on how much of this gets absorbed systemically. So then we know. In our study, it was 12 out of 279, I think was the number. People reported that they felt high, quote unquote high. So,
Okay.
but that's two things. So one, we don't know how much actually gets absorbed. Two, there's only 1.5 milligrams of THC in these suppositories. So, and if you were to take that in an edible, that's a very low amount to make you feel high anyways. If you're taking suppositories with higher amounts of THC, it is definitely possible to feel high. Earlier, it was like 2 years ago, I tried one that had, I think, like 50 milligrams of Delta 8 in it that somebody had made for me, and I definitely felt high from that. But the base was different than cocoa butter. So it depends on a lot of factors. These ones generally do not make people feel high, and if they do, it's mild.
Okay, that's great information. And one more just logistical question before we get into your study and the results. For women who are using this for menstrual pain, can you put it up your vagina and a tampon, or is it one or the other?
So I tried these with a menstrual cup.
Okay.
And that was a disaster. Don't do that.
Okay,
because
disaster.
It just falls into the menstrual cup, and then you have a big mess. So menstrual cups are not recommended.
Okay.
I don't know about like the diaphragms or the discs. I think it might be something similar to that. So tampons for me actually work really well.
Okay, because it like holds it in
Holds
place
it in
almost?
there. Yeah. And
I bet you could put it in the top of a tampon and then insert a tampon as you normally would.
Yeah.
And then it would just position itself, and you have an applicator.
Right. But you could totally do that. You're genius.
Next cycle, I'm trying that.
Yeah.
Before we get into the data, what made you want to study women specifically, women's pain during menstrual periods? We know this is pretty understudied in general, and I think it's really, really cool that you were getting data behind this and actually doing research. So what kind of led to this specifically?
Well, we had talked with the people from the Kenigma and the Relief app, and they're like, this is something we offer. We do research. We could do, a market study on any of your products. And I literally looked behind me on my shelf at all of our products lined up. And I was like, okay, we have the CBG, we have all these products, and at the end was the suppositories. And I was like, what about the suppositories? Because and Alana, the head of the Kenigma, just lit up. Because one, there's so little published research on suppositories for anything. I just recently looked, Foria's study just came out, but there's one on CBD suppositories for men with HIV. But beyond that, there's nothing on this. And cannabis is supposed to be the most studied drug in the world, yet we have nothing on cannabis, this delivery method for period pain, something that half the population experiences.
Yeah, and talk about overlapping stigmas. Cannabis, obviously highly stigmatized. Menstrual periods in general, very stigmatized as well. And suppositories in general, very stigmatized. I tell a story a lot. I was once at the State House here in New Hampshire advocating for patients' rights to something. And somebody on the legislative board brought up suppositories in a joking way about shoving cannabis up your ass. And I was like, That's not okay. Like, that is
Right.
not okay. You're in a room of patients here. Many people probably use or wish they had access to this method, and you're joking about it. And, like, we're fighting for our right to use this medicine. Like,
Right.
absolutely not. Not cool. That's not cool. So, it is a serious topic, and it is a topic that, so, suppositories really do offer a unique therapeutic value. We're talking about pain below the waist, we're talking about inflammation below the waist, we're talking about long lasting durations of medicine. Would you mind now kind of just talking about the study design, and then we can get into like some of the data you have on how long these products last? And please also include, you mentioned that they have sub 2 milligram of THC. So what is the like formulation of the suppositories as well?
Yeah, we'll start with the formulations. So everybody knows, oh, they don't. I really like working with whole plant CBD. So we're taking the raw, full extract cannabis oil, and then we're combining that with cocoa butter, like organic cocoa butter, and then we have some targeted terpenes in there because we all know terpenes are amazing medicine from nature.
Bioactive.
Yes, absolutely. So that's it, it's a really simple, it's a simple formulation, and it's like a nature formulation.
Perfect.
Anybody can make these, but I know not everybody wants to do that work. Yeah, so I really like to work with whole plant CBD suppositories because research says that whole plant full spectrum uh, outperform isolates.
Mm-hmm.
So because they are whole plant, they do have a small amount of CBG. They have 1.5 milligrams of THC in each one, which is a very low amount. But all of those, of course, work together
Mm-hmm.
synergistically. Some call it the entourage effect to help manage our symptoms.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so you did a study with the guys at More Better and the Kenigma, and how many participants were in the study?
All right. So the study design, we started with 103 participants. It was a two-part study. We wanted to compare a period cycle without the suppositories and then a period cycle with the suppositories. So the same people did both cycles. So it
Cool.
wasn't a placebo controlled. However, we still did have baseline data from the same people who did not use the suppositories. Um,
Cool.
yeah. So what we did was after the participants enrolled in the study, then they went through one period cycle without the suppositories and they filled out data every single day. There were like baseline questionnaires, and then every morning they would get a text and answer the questions. How was your period yesterday? What was, the worst pain? How are all of your other symptoms for 7 days during their cycle? Then once they completed that, then we sent them a box of the Yoni suppositories. And then on their next cycle, they filled out the exact same question with the use of the suppositories.
Cool. Awesome. So I know you found some pretty awesome results from this study. So what are kind of the most big findings from this? Like, what were you most excited to see when you got this data back? Because I know when we design studies, we might have a hypothesis, but we just don't know what that data is going to look like. And it is like Christmas Day, as a researcher, when you get to look at your data for the first time, or even if you're analyzing data and you finally like make a chart or a graph and like have a visual of it. So, what was that data that you were so excited about when you got it back?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was nervous about it. I mean, I did kind of like, I had to meditate about it. Like, what if these didn't work? I need to
Totally.
separate myself from this outcome. Um,
But also so cool that you do this research regardless, because there are companies that are so scared of bad results that they don't do the research. And it's like, that's so sad to me that like you don't have any faith in cannabis or yourself to formulate a product that works, because your product did work. And like, it's really cool that you can share that in
right.
numbers and graphs now.
Yes, yes. And, I got to a point mentally that like, even if it didn't work, we still need to know. So then,
Yeah,
then we know that this is not a good thing. But once I got the data back, I was like, whoa.
it
So
works.
they work. Yeah. So things that I was really excited about were like how it helped with pain. So, the big one was we're looking at the average pain score 1 to 10. What was it before the period? What was it after the period? All right. So the pain scores that we're looking at mostly, did this help with pain? objectively. So the average pain value before participants used this suppository was 5.94, came on that up to 6. And then after the use, it dropped down to 3.26, which was a
Whoa. And you said
drop
that's out of 6, 0 to 6?
out of 10.
Oh, out of 10.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
1 to 10. Average pain before use was about a 6, and then after use was a 3.2, 3.3. So that's a drop of 55%.
Wow. That's like really significant.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. That's really exciting.
Wow. And did they use the product every day of their period, or is it only when they felt like they needed it? How did they administrate it?
Yeah, most people used just between 1 and 2 suppositories, and most of them used on just like days 1 and 2, which is
Oh, okay.
where pain is the worst. Some people did have pain lasting throughout their period, and some needed more, some needed just one. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Can you share more data?
Yes. So, overall, what we were really excited about was that we had 79 people complete this study. When you're looking at product studies that are in the research, the numbers are like 34 people or 26 people, and it's just such a small data set. But to have 79 people complete this is huge.
It is, especially for something so variable like a period, because even like the number of days that somebody cycles is different. The pain thresholds are different. Like there's so much variability. So I think those numbers like speak volumes in this type of study too.
Yeah, absolutely. To your question on how many people used it on what days. So 79 people completed it. 74 used on day 1, 76 used on day 2. Then it dropped down to like, this is 57, 46, 29, and 5.
Cool. I don't know if you collected this data or not, but did most people use it during the day or during the night or both? Because I've just from some previous information I have about homemade suppositories is that they can be quite leaky. And, a lot of people do use them during the night because you're like, horizontal and you're able to kind of absorb it and get that pain relief, and they're long lasting. So I'm just curious if you had any data on that.
Yeah, great question. The times that people used, most people used between 9 and 5 p.m. Some people used like in the evening, but most people use during the day. And again, when you're using with the tampon, that's another benefit of the tampon is that it can kind of help to absorb the leakiness that could happen.
Totally. Yeah, I didn't even think about that benefit. And you can also like wear a liner or something, even if you're wearing it during the day and you don't want it like to ruin your clothes. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's an option.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay. Other data points we were excited about was like, how many people did it help with the pain? This one kind of blew us away. So the question was it effective at reducing the pain, the daily pain that I experienced? 94% said that it did help with the pain.
Yeah,
94%.
Crazy. Almost 100%.
Yes.
That's how you know it works. I mean, that's really, really cool.
Yep. 92% said that they agreed that they had less pain. Something like 95% said that it helped with period cramps. So, which is exactly what we were going for. And the other data that we saw it helped people with in those who suffer with this was nausea, headaches and migraines, focus, and just overall quality of life. Over 85% said that it helped improve their quality of life.
Man, a metric we don't always track, but is probably the most important metric that we ever can measure in research studies.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that like we now have states trying to like that this is illegal in a lot of states and a lot of countries.
Yeah, and I think you the last episode I just recorded of this podcast, we were talking about the hemp market, but not the hemp market that you're in. The hemp market of non-organic type plant products, but of synthetic products that are made in a laboratory. And You're so right. Like those products are so accessible to people that are made synthetically, but the natural plant product is not accessible and it's still so prohibited. But 94% increase in quality of life and pain reduction. Like those numbers you just cannot argue with. And putting numbers to it is important though, because if you go to the State House, if you go and you're talking to other researchers, you can say all day long, like, this helped me, this helped my grandma, this helped my daughter. That's all really important to give those personal anecdotes. But putting numbers and research and things you really can't dispute out into the world as science advocacy, like it's so, so, so important. And sharing it online, which you're doing. Like you're not just doing it, then you're creating content about it, then you're sharing with people, then you're coming on podcasts. And it's like, that's really how you get the information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it is frustrating that like something that has been used for millennia, that all this does is confirm what we already knew. Like we already knew that suppositories work, but this just confirms it.
Exactly. I thought one other cool piece of data that you had shared with me previously was the duration of these products, for how long they worked. So for anyone who's used to like maybe smoking and maybe you feel the effects for an hour or two, if you're used to edibles, maybe you feel it for, I don't know, 3 to 6, maybe even more hours. This is another really good method for dosing for long periods of time and getting that relief for an extended period of time, whether you're at work or you're at an event or you're going to bed and you need that like long time of relief. So would you mind sharing some of that data?
Sure. We had, out of like the 279 uses and then 79 people, 91 of them, of the uses, said that it lasts between 3 to 4 hours. And then 85 said that it lasts longer than 4 hours. And if we were to do this again, we would, extend those options longer so we could see what the bell curve was and how long it lasted. When I use them personally, it's usually around 6 hours of relief that I get.
Okay. Cool. Do you typically when you use them, are you like stacking a dose with something else, either inhalable or a tincture, and taking a suppository, or is usually the suppository like good for you to kind of go on?
Usually the suppository is what works best for me. I don't consume THC during the day because I'm not one of those people that can function on THC.
Yeah, fair.
But I will, sometimes I'll just do one or the other. And, I really like the suppositories because it just kind of feels like an edible for your hoo-ha. Like you can like feel your uterus relaxing with the suppository.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like for people who also are very nervous before sex, or they've had some sort of trauma that like they just don't feel the need to do that ever and they just struggle with that, I feel like it might even be a good like pre sexual experience to really like relax your body from the inside out. And I know like they make lubes now that have cannabinoids in it, which is great too, but I feel like suppositories can also be a great method there.
Yeah. Suppositories can be great for painful sex before and after, and using, for a few hours beforehand can really help to relax the uterus. And I'll also say I just recorded a video on the cannabis and orgasm study that was done, saying that a lot of people used THC beforehand, and we know that THC kind of quiets the amygdala and hippocampus where trauma is stored. So that oral might be necessary for some people to relax the brain, suppository for relaxing the organs, and the combination could be fire. Probably is.
Interesting. So is this a published study you're talking about with cannabis and orgasm?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Can you send me it? I'll put it in the show notes for other people to read. I know a lot of people struggle with that, and that's also a highly stigmatized topic, especially for women orgasm. So I think that's important to share.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great study. And if you want, I can get you connected to the author.
Yeah, I think everyone would love hearing a little more about that because a lot of people do rely on cannabis for libido in general. Like, if you want to feel either more connected with yourself or more connected with your body and your partner,
Mhm.
like it can really, really help reduce those barriers and just make you feel more comfortable. But obviously, locking in on your dose is pretty important as well as your consumption
Yes,
method.
yes, absolutely. But now we have research to show, again, what we already knew.
Oh, so rad. I love that. Some people even consume cannabis while they have sex, and that's cool,
That is
in
cool.
my opinion. Okay, cool. Is there any other data you want to share from the study before we move on to another
Sure.
topic? Same
One
topic?
cool, yeah, two cool data points. One was that, we looked at the medications used between the two cycles, and there was a 70% drop in medications that were used from without the suppositories to with the suppositories, which is
Whoa.
fantastic.
Like Midol? Is that what we're talking about with medications?
So this we didn't ask exactly what type of medication,
Okay, yeah.
but it was it's going to be like over the counters or prescriptions, because in the other section, if people said other things, that's when where they listed their cannabis use.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
and people did need less oral cannabis.
Yeah, I definitely want to see a study on uh, how systemic suppositories do go into your body. Because I'm just also thinking of like new moms when you've obviously gone through some trauma down in that region, but you still want to breastfeed and you still not even want you have to
Yeah.
breastfeed often, you have to still kind of function in many ways, and a lot of people maybe don't want to be high but they still need that medicine, they're still healing, so like I would love to see a study on how much of that THC is actually reaching systemic blood flow, but also how much is actually reaching your breast milk if administered via suppository.
Yes, yes, that's important. And oh my gosh, these suppositories for postpartum pain. You know how much
Right.
like tissue damage we experience when birthing a baby? These could be so amazing. And they have like the strong antibacterial properties, so we could see less, postpartum infections. So much we don't know.
Yeah, if anyone wants to fund those studies, Megan and I are available for contract research. So thanks for sharing all that data. Are you comfortable with me sharing the data report with listeners as well if they want to read
Sure.
more?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Was the Foria Wellness, was that the one on the study you're talking about on orgasms, or was that a different
No,
one?
that's a different one.
Okay.
So
Do you
Foria
want to touch on
Wellness,
that at all?
yeah, Foria Wellness they just published a study that, I mean, again, we can like touch on the research part of this. They did an IRB approved study, and their recruitment was back in 2019 to like 2022. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, the IRB approved research can take years. We finished ours within 4 months. We had,
Right.
which was really cool. But their study, their suppositories contain 100 milligrams of broad spectrum CBD, meaning there's no THC in there. I don't know if there are terpenes in there. It's not a whole plant formulation.
So
Um,
broad spectrum is like whole spectrum, but with no THC at all. So it doesn't even
no
have
THC.
that 0.3% that's allowed in hemp products.
Correct, correct. So yeah,
Cool.
broad spec has no THC, and theirs was a higher dose of CBD. And we find that also with tinctures is that, people need lower doses of CBD when it's whole plant, when it's combined with a small amount of THC. So this definitely, checks out. They had a higher dose, and participants had similar results, reduction in period pain. And theirs was, they had a placebo control. It wasn't really placebo controlled. They have to be really careful with how they do it, because suppositories are considered a medical device, and there's more red tape around the research. So,
Oh.
but they had like 200 people who did not participate and just gave their data, or their answers to their questions, and then they had, I think it was around 100-ish people who did use the suppositories, and
Hmm.
the results. I haven't dug deep into them, but similar in helping with period pain.
Cool. Thanks for reviewing that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to talk about in the suppository realm?
Sure. So, yes. So local issues are just one reason to use suppositories. There are people who like to use suppositories as a method to get high doses of cannabinoids. And those are ones who are treating their cancer with higher doses, hundreds of milligrams of THC. This is what we did on a 9-year-old patient of ours with Ewing's sarcoma. The mom wanted to do suppositories this way. So we would put a couple hundred milligrams of THC and CBD in the suppository for her. So a lot of people decide to go this route for cancers or for other, conditions that might require more THC. And the THC supposedly does not make people feel high. And that's where we get the question of, well, is it actually doing anything? Is it actually getting absorbed?
We see so much variability in cannabis products. As you're mentioning, like some people get high off of 1 milligram of THC, while others don't get high off of 200 milligrams of THC. Right. So, yeah, I think we're really missing that one piece of the puzzle of like, what is going on here? Is it reaching systemic circulation? Can people get high from this? But in the case of like cancers, oftentimes you are depressed and you kind of do need a little bit of a mood lift from cannabis, but maybe not like a child in 200 milligrams worth, Right. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when people are talking about suppositories, there's just kind of sometimes a different separate conversation when we're talking about suppositories for cancer.
Is the THC and CBD metabolized when you're using a suppository?
So if used rectally, if it gets pushed up far enough to reach the hepatic portal vein, it will go through the liver and then, convert to 11-hydroxy.
11-hydroxy. Okay.
So that's why some people who they can end up on the moon, but if they don't push it up that high, then it's not going to get metabolized that way. It'll just absorb, through the rectal wall or the vaginal wall. So
is there any other reasons other than like cancer, menstrual? I know I'm thinking endometriosis. I'm thinking some sort of like pelvis pain or tailbone pain. If you've ever hurt your tailbone, ow, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. I think suppositories would be good for that. What other conditions do you think would be helpful for people to use suppositories?
Men have used them for low back pain, prostate issues. That's something we could definitely use research on is prostatitis and inflamed prostate. How well do suppositories work for that? Let's see here. Any sort of pelvic issues? When I was putting out content about the suppositories, some people messaged me and said, what about this condition? And it was like this really, I don't even remember it, but it's kind of like an autoimmune condition that affects like the skin of the vaginal wall and the vulva. And again, we don't know if it works for somebody with that condition and may not work for another person with that condition.
Right.
Like cannabis in general.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great information. I wanted to ask you also just a couple questions. If any of the listeners are listening to us talk about the suppositories that you've made for people with cancer, or we're talking about specific formulations, we're talking about psychedelics and anxiety, we're talking about people's specific issues. Through your business, is this where people can contact you and say, hey, I know you're a cannabis and psychedelic nurse. This is what I'm struggling with. I'm trying to find something that helps with me. Do you help people, do you formulate products and work closely with people to find a therapeutic that works for them? Do you do consulting? How do people work with you?
Yeah, great question. So when people want to work with us, first of all, we have the entire line of hemp products, tinctures, edibles, topicals, suppositories. People can just go on the website and purchase those. If they want some nurse guidance on which of those we think would be best for them to start with, then they can schedule a free product guidance call and talk to one of our nurses, either me or our director of patient care services, Ariane, who's amazing. And then we'll kind of guide you on which of our products might be appropriate. For people who want a deeper dive into their health and wellness, we do offer consultations. Those are great for cancer patients who need the extra, because treating cancer with cannabis is such a nuanced approach. So that definitely takes more than the 15-minute call. And we're looking at like chemotherapy interactions and all of that. And then if people are interested in microdosing psilocybin, we offer microdosing programs where we guide people along their microdosing journey. We take the guesswork out of it. We get people connected with safe sources, and yeah, we guide people through. And it's so much more than just taking a pill. It's like integrating it into your life, picking up on the small changes that happen over time, and helping people reflect on that and improve their life.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Through through operating your business, and doing this research, which again, super valuable. What are the challenges? Because I think a lot of the time we might think that research has to be a $10 million thing, or you have to be this massive, massive, massive company to be able to do research or to communicate research. But there's obviously a ton of obstacles, whether you're working with cannabis, psychedelics, or any product that is going into somebody's body and relating to their health and well-being. So what are the challenges that you've experienced through Trusted Cannabis Nurse? Because I know there's more than one.
Yeah. So many obstacles. So, we can touch on what IRB approval means for a study. And
Yeah.
our study was not IRB approved. To get IRB approval, that's an internal review board. You have to submit an application of all of the study details. And then it goes through this. I mean, you've done this, so you probably know better than I do.
Well, and it's anytime you're working with human beings. That's what IRB is required for, anytime you're involving humans in research. But the issue is it's aimed at academics. The whole system is set up for somebody within academia, not from somebody actually making real products and working with people who are already taking these products. So just some background knowledge on what IRB is, but continue.
Yeah. And in doing, IRB approved research, the application fee itself is well over $1,000 for a lot of things. And
for applying.
Just to apply. And
it's like paying to take the freaking GRE. Why am I paying to take this exam? This doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. I know. So many things wrong. So if we want data on one of our products and we want to be able to publish it in some prestigious journal or any journal, we need to have this IRB approval. And I was told that suppositories are considered a medical device because they get inserted and there's extra red tape around medical devices. And then you have to have the appropriate people. You have to have the primary investigator, which is usually somebody with an MD or PhD behind their name. I'm an RN with a master's degree, and I'm running a small business, so it's not in our budget to hire all of these extra people to do this. Right. But we took the alternative of, let's just do it. Let's just do it ourselves and collect the data. And we did work with a third party who helped us collect the data and crunch the numbers for us. So it is, yes, it can be better research, but it is a fantastic baseline to do more research.
I think it's fantastic too. And, I think the IRB obstacle is too much of an obstacle, and it's too much of a profit-making machine to make any sense for altruistic purposes, like many things associated with academia. It's just not accessible for practical purposes. And I've done studies that are IRB approved. I've done studies that are not IRB approved, and both are incredibly, incredibly valuable. But yeah, as you're saying, if you're a small business and you have to spend half of your budget just getting to the point of being IRB approved, that's probably not a good use of your money. And cannabis is this really unique situation where millions of people are already putting this into their body. We know it's safe. People are doing this regardless. We're not just testing something random. So it's with cannabis specifically, we haven't really leveraged a lot of the user groups because there's this whole mistrust in researchers and in the government between cannabis consumers. So I don't think that IRB is necessary. I think it's more necessary to just start asking people questions and asking people who are already using these products how they're working, how often they're using them, what dose are you using. And that's really like such valuable information. But the traditional system of academics have put this IRB approval so high on the pedestal. And a lot of that is to keep people away like us who are doing research with real products. So, you know, I give accolades to you. I give accolades to the team at More Better that we work with a lot that is reducing the barriers and really helping get valuable information out there for an affordable price for researchers and people who own product companies.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, shout out to More Better for definitely helping to make this possible. And there's something else I was going to say.
Wait, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
How is the Kenigma involved in this project? Like, are they just research partners, like with you and More Better?
So the Kenigma, they are kind of on the marketing side of it. So they help to recruit. You know, they have this really large email list of like 100,000. So they helped to recruit for the study, and then they have published the data, and then they send out email blasts with the data reports. You know, to kind of help us to get our money back on the investment on the research. So it's kind of a, you know, I think it's a really good partnership between the two of them.
Yeah, the Kenigma is great. If you Google some really niche questions about cannabis, the Kenigma will probably be one of those top things to come up. Oh yeah, Cody knows. Like I think I told Cody about this, maybe even on this podcast, but I was looking into infusing milk with THC, and it's like the first thing that came up was the Kenigma on how to infuse milk. And I'm like, milk and cheese. And I'm like, that's nice to find that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
That's cool.
From the Kenigma and also being able to do this, and like, because you know, you can have the research, but if nobody knows about it, then what good is it? So the Kenigma is helping to get it out.
Right, which is, yeah, like a traditional publishing of academic papers. Like, there's no marketing component. It's just like your gold star is getting it out into the peer-reviewed world, and then you just move on to your next project. But like, if you're publishing on impactful studies that could change patients' lives, you kind of need that information to get to the patient so that people know that this data is here and it helps. So I think that's great. And marketing often gets kind of a bad rap, but it is so necessary for getting word out about research and products and whatever else people are doing.
Right. Yeah. And my marketing approach is, anybody who follows me, is a very educational one. I want people to feel empowered to make their own decisions. If that happens to be one of our products, amazing. If not, then, you know, at least you have the information to make the right decision for you.
Cool. So where do people stay up to date with you? Where do people find you? And how do people see this awesome content that you're putting out?
All right. If people want to just check out Trusted Cannabis Nurse on all the platforms, TikTok, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and people can connect with us there. Like when people message me, I message them back and answer their questions, and then I can send them the appropriate links. Otherwise, the website is trustedcannabisnurse.com. People can book their free calls there and check out the products there.
Cool. Awesome. And I'll link your products below as well, which include the suppositories, include the CBG that I've been taking today and absolutely love, and all these other full spec products. And again, support people who are doing the research on their own products and not the first thing that comes up on Google. Yeah. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. We aren't ranking on the first page yet for CBD suppositories, but
yeah, that's okay. I don't even know if we're ranking for pharmacognosy, and nobody's even using that word, so it's all good. Oh, man. It's an uphill battle, but I'm glad we're in it together. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I always love talking to you, Megan, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise and the research that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back.
Cool. Mad love. Talk soon.